Feilu Novel Network exclusive contract novel. Let you buy scrap iron, do you buy an aircraft carrier? Reborn Steel Purchasing Officer, with 50,000 yuan, goes to Maoxiong Country to purchase steel materials. In the midst of a group of unsuccessful searches, Fang Ping set his sights on the half-built Valiang aircraft carrier. So, Fang Ping came to his door with 50,000 yuan to talk about the aircraft carrier business. Shortly thereafter, a behemoth sailed into the country. Suddenly, the whole country was shocked. Isn't it asking you to buy steel? How did you get the aircraft carrier back? Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Going abroad to buy scrap metal and targeting aircraft carriers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Going abroad to buy scrap metal and targeting aircraft carriers. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward on the street. A young man stood in front of the public telephone booth with a worried expression, as if arguing with someone. I know the factory director, and I will come up with a solution as soon as possible. Oh, you can't blame me either. It's normal for Maoxiong to disintegrate and his partners to run away. Okay, I'll figure out a way to find a way for our factory. The young man's name is Fang Ping. He is a reborn person. It has been 3 days since he woke up and found himself reborn, and he has returned to the early 1990s once again. Steel and iron, how could this thing be so easy to find? Fang Ping said speechlessly. In his past life, he was a purchaser. Due to the urgent need for a batch of steel in the factory, he was sent to the country of Maoxiong. However, news of the disintegration broke out in the news. Major capital is running away one after another, leaving behind a mess that even they can't afford to worry about. How could they have the heart to sign a cooperation agreement with him? More importantly, the budget given to him by the factory was only $50,000. Having less money and more things to do, he thought it over and realized that continuing to consume it was not very meaningful. However, due to his own tasks, he cannot afford to let go. Fang Ping dropped the phone and began to think about countermeasures in place. Not to mention, he really thought of a note. Since capital has already run away, he will find some who cannot run. There will always be some people who are trapped in their wealth and cannot escape the alliance. However, the specific way and who to look for will depend on Fang Ping's own consideration. After much thought, his eyes suddenly lit up. Aircraft carrier. In his previous life in 2002, Fang Ping vividly remembered that the Kiel had purchased an aircraft carrier from the disintegrated Maoxiong alliance at a scrap price. Originally named Valiang, later also known as LN ship. This thing is almost entirely made of steel casting, and it is also a high-quality special steel. He believed that if he could get this thing back, how can the factory director's requirements be met? Unconsciously, a flash of heat flashed in Fang Ping's eyes. Immediately after, he ran back to the hotel. I couldn't take the fresh one myself just now, but if it were scrap iron, there wouldn't be a lot left. Anyway, in the current Bears League, I can't afford to worry about myself, maybe I can actually dress up as one. At this moment, Fang Ping rushed into the room and refused the enthusiastic invitation from the landlady. He quickly rushed to his own cottage and found an alliance map inside, gradually searching for it. As for whether this amount of money is sufficient, Fang Ping doesn't need to consider it at all. Anyway, he is responsible for the task, so the money should be handled by the factory director. Fortunately, his memory was still relatively clear, and it didn't take much time. He was pleasantly surprised to find the specific location of the Black Sea Company, which Valiang belonged to. Nikolov. Of course, just this is not enough. He must first understand the specific current situation of Black Sea Company before making any further plans. Fang Ping pondered for a moment and immediately decided to pack up his things and prepare to leave. Rather than asking others, it would be better for him to personally investigate for a clearer understanding. After arriving in Nikolafu, Fang Ping immediately chose a hotel closest to the Black Sea shipyard and conducted a 3-day investigation. In these 3 days, he finally learned the information he wanted. "Thank you, my friend. It seems that my plan has fallen through. I should go now." Fang Ping picked up his glass and said to the owner of a tavern. "You're welcome, my friend from the Dragon Kingdom. If you really want steel, why don't you buy their aircraft carrier? That big guy probably has a lot of upgraded steel on him," said the tavern owner with a teasing tone. "Are you joking, old Ivan? You're drunk, I should go now," Fang Ping said with a deliberately broken expression. More than 10 minutes later, Fang Ping returned to the tavern and his eyes immediately regained clarity. After going to the bathroom to wash up, he took out a thick notebook and carefully recorded the news he received today. I saw that this notebook was densely packed, obviously recording a lot of things. Even old drunkards like Lao Ivan have learned about the news of an aircraft carrier at the Black Sea shipyard, and it seems that the impact of the disintegration of Maoxiong is very extraordinary. Fang Ping wrote while secretly contemplating. Later, he continued to murmur to himself. At present, the Black Sea shipyard has been shut down for several days, and it is said that the next investment that should have been made has not been received yet, which means their funding chain is very tight. And the workers' weekly salary system, they have not been paid for 2 consecutive weeks, and their emotions are very tense. Based on the current situation, it is estimated that the Black Sea shipyard may shut down at any time unless they have new capital injections. If not, the shipyard will go bankrupt at any time. But who can afford such a large expenditure? Fang Ping came up with such a crucial question again. There is no single capital that can afford a large project like an aircraft carrier, apart from the size of the Bears Alliance. Unless countries like the Bears Alliance. For example, beautiful country. At this moment, Fang Ping's eyes unconsciously narrowed. That is to say, now is the best time for him to take advantage of the situation. Under the dim yellow light, the square and pitch-black eyes shone brilliantly, like cold stars. He murmured to himself, "I'm sorry, factory manager. We can't transport it back to you. It depends on whether we can drive it back." Chapter 2. Saving Chinese Shipyards. Kneeling down. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Saving Chinese Shipyards. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward the next morning, early in the morning. Fang Ping tidied up neatly and organized himself incredibly neatly. The forehead was rarely waxed, as if it had been licked by a dog. He put on a straight Zhongshan suit and went out. Arriving near the Blackwater shipyard, Fang Ping deliberately did not walk through the main entrance, but took a big circle and arrived at the back. Subsequently, a strong anger instantly appeared on his face. That look, as if someone owed him 8 million, with easy facial expressions to switch. "Damn it, didn't you say it was agreed to meet here? Where did the person go to me? Give me a response when you hear it." Fang Ping shouted loudly at the back door of the Blackwater shipyard, which successfully attracted a group of workers who were gathering at the back door to slack off. Yellow-skinned people. A few people glanced at each other, revealing a hint of surprise. One of them pondered for a moment, threw away the cigarette but in his mouth, crushed it, and then stood up and walked out of the factory, welcoming him. "Hi sir, may I ask if there is anything I can help you with? I'm hooked." Fang Ping's eyes twitched as he heard the sound. Subsequently, he immediately regained his composure and pretended to have an angry expression, saying, "Are you guys with fur bears all bad guys who don't keep their promises? They made a promise to meet at the Thorn Rose Cafe near the Black Sea shipyard, but when they arrived, they couldn't even see anyone. We dragon people hate people without contracts the most. You know, the workers in my factory are still waiting for me to bring back a large amount of steel for them to process." Listening to Fang Ping's verbose demeanor, if it were normal, this worker might still have some thoughts to chat with him, so it would be considered laziness. But now, he has not brought back his salary for 2 consecutive weeks, and his wife has moved to someone else's house to avoid dragging him down, so she has no intention of arguing with Fang Ping. He immediately perfunctorily said, "Sorry sir, there is no one you are looking for here. Please leave." After speaking, he turned around and returned to the factory. As soon as he sat down, he heard his companions asking. He looked helpless and told everyone present what he had heard from Fang Ping before. After listening, the companions lost their minds and looked up, thinking about where to go next. Suddenly. At this moment, a voice suddenly erupted from the crowd. "Damn it, come on, stop him. Whether we can survive or not depends on that dragon man." An old man stood up excitedly, pulled aside the crowd blocking the way, and was about to chase in the direction of Fang Ping. This made everyone feel very puzzled, and they all didn't understand why this old man went crazy. "Emile, what are you going crazy about? Yeah, isn't it just a dragon person being played with? As for being so excited." Everyone complained one after another. The old man named Emile immediately retorted without hesitation upon hearing this. He said, "Do you understand what kind of factory we are? A shipyard. Steel doesn't have much. As long as we sell it, will we soon have a salary to earn?" Everyone immediately realized upon hearing this. Especially the person who had previously approached Fang Ping, the speed was incredibly fast, surpassing everyone in the blink of an eye. He has only been married to his wife Maria for 3 years. His wife is so understanding, how can he bear to let her lose? He must prove to Maria that he is not afraid of being dragged down. "Wait, sir, sir." The old emir shouted loudly, his voice coming from behind. Fang Ping walked ahead and turned around perfectly, revealing a puzzled expression. "Do you have something to do?" He took a step back, his eyes full of vigilance. Such a reaction immediately made these workers feel a bit at a loss. At this moment, the emir old man squeezed out of the crowd, eagerly explaining that they were well-intentioned and stating that they had heard that Fang Ping needed steel and came to inquire if they needed help. Upon hearing this, Fang Ping immediately relaxed. Immediately after, he frowned and asked, "Do you really have it? The quantity I want is not small." As soon as these words were spoken, the emir, including the workers present, straightened their chests and showed a proud expression. "Of course, this gentleman from Longwa, you may not be familiar with our Black Sea shipyard, but the alliance was already among the top in the country before its dissolution," Emile said confidently. He doesn't believe that no matter how much Fang Ping wants, it can still consume more steel than an aircraft carrier. No big deal, they just want the commander to sell the aircraft carrier. Then, Fang Ping was warmly invited into the factory by these workers and was honored to be invited to a clean office. These workers, some delivering cigarettes and some delivering water, looked like they wished Fang Ping could live here. And everything they did was to follow the emir's advice. One sentence. If you want to live a decent life, you must do everything possible to keep this businessman from the Dragon Kingdom. As for Emir himself, he ran all the way and personally went to the office of the largest director of this shipyard. Normally, he may not be able to see it. But in this situation, it's difficult to get a salary. Who has the air traffic control to deal with this mess, which gives Emile an opportunity to take advantage of himself. He arrived at the largest office on the top floor, knocked on the door a few times, and then rushed straight in. Chapter 3. Buying aircraft carriers at the price of scrap iron. Kneel down. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Buying aircraft carriers at the price of scrap iron. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward André is very annoyed now. As the 5th largest shipyard during the Alliance period and the only aircraft carrier assembly plant, the Nikolai shipyard should have been an old hen who could lay golden eggs. In just 100 years, this old hen has incubated over 1,000 various types of ships, including but not limited to aircraft carriers, destroyers, cruisers, and other heavy ships. But now everything is gone. Just because those guys, who are not easy, casually posted a news about the disintegration and then ran away. Only left him with a mess. Damn it, damn it. Andre angrily pounded the table, blood flowing out of his fingers without realizing it. Factory manager, Andre factory manager, good news, great news. We have contacted an Eastern Dragon person who is very interested in cooperating with us. The sound of knocking on the office door rang out. Emile walked in excitedly from outside. Andre furrowed his brow, wiped off the bloodstains on the table with his sleeve without leaving a trace, and wrapped his hand in a handkerchief. Then he spoke coldly, "Which department are you from?" Judging from the dirty uniforms of the other party, they should be frontline workers in the shipyard. A frontline worker actually ran to his office and said they helped him contact a businessman from the Dragon Kingdom. Is his shipyard really hopeless? Unexpectedly, he has fallen to the point where even a worker can run into his office at any time and talk to him. At this point, Andre's heart became extremely angry. But Emile, with an excited expression on his face, introduced Andre, imagining in his mind which tavern he would go to for a drink after receiving his salary, and the best way to have a romantic encounter. Seeing the other party talking endlessly, Andre raised his hand to stop them. And in Emile's almost puzzled gaze, he smiled and said, "Since that's the case, could you please lead him here and let us meet?" "Did you agree?" Emile looked excited. Andre smiled and nodded. Immediately, Emile rushed out of the office like a sprint and ran towards the direction where Fang Ping was. "Dragon people, tell me your purpose for coming here." Looking at the well-dressed square in front of him, Andre spoke directly. He doesn't believe in the nonsense of people like Emir. What gives him more trust is his own eyes and ears. "I'm here to buy an aircraft carrier." Faced with inquiries, Fang Ping was also straightforward. Those tricks can only deceive simple workers before. For such a senior veteran, honesty is the best weapon. As soon as he finished speaking, Andre's pupils suddenly tightened. Sure enough, he slowly straightened his waist and looked up and down at the dragon man in front of him again. After a while, he just said, "Do you know what you were just saying? An indispensable presence in the Navy. One of the most important ships in naval warfare. Being able to provide a safe zone for fighter jets in areas far from the homeland." How did this young man casually articulate such a strategic thing? He has reason to suspect that the other party may have been planning for a long time. With this in mind, he made a decisive decision and refused to say, "Sorry, we don't have what you want here. Please leave." As a pure-blooded member of the Bears Alliance, even if the alliance disbands, he must remain loyal to his beliefs. Is there a bottom line like this? Fang Ping was surprised in his heart, but he was not surprised at all. Anyway, it's still a big deal. Can't they stick to the bottom line? Of course, he also believes that as soon as his own conditions are met, the other party will definitely agree, and it will be done immediately. Don't worry, Mr. Edward. You haven't heard what I'm saying about the price yet. It's not fair to buy or sell. You can take a look first. If you don't agree by then, it's not too late for me to leave. Fang Ping smiled and said. Upon hearing these words, Andre should have immediately started driving people, but for some reason, by a stroke of luck, his words immediately changed their tone. "Okay, I want to hear how much your Dragon Kingdom will pay for this," Andre said stiffly. "Of course." Fang Ping smiled and then asked Andre if he could provide him with some information about the aircraft carrier for research, so that he could provide an accurate price. Despite some reluctance, Andre had already reached this point and turned around to take out a document from the safe behind him, placing it in front of Fang Ping. And he reminded that this material cannot be leaked. Fang Ping readily agreed. Subsequently, Andre saw Fang Ping deftly pull out an abacus and play with it with a crackling sound on the spot. In less than a minute, Fang Ping stopped his hand movements. He said seriously, based on the current international scrap iron prices, I calculated that throwing some torpedo explosives and other waste on the ship would cost about $5 million. Let's take it as $5 million and make it up for you. 500. Andre was foolish on the spot. He thought that the Dragon Kingdom might take advantage of the situation and that the other party would pay an unparalleled price to purchase an aircraft carrier. Because this belongs to the national defense industry, even the greatest effort is worth it. But he never expected that the humble and smiling young man in front of him would say such insane words. Succa Bulii, this is an aircraft carrier, not a farm machinery vehicle from your Dragon Kingdom. Did you treat me as scrap copper and iron? You are a stain on modern military art like aircraft carriers. Andre roared uncontrollably, his voice deafening, almost causing the roof to collapse. Chapter 4. Crazy Bargaining. Aircraft carriers are like scrap metal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Crazy Bargaining. Aircraft carriers are like scrap metal. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward. At this moment, Andre was like an enraged humanoid brown bear, with red eyes and a desire to eat people. Faced with such a scene, Fang Ping made an unexpected performance, and even Andre was frightened. He angrily patted the table and pointed at Andre's nose, scolding angrily. What is it called? What are you barking at in a dog? Have you paid off your car and house loans, and have you chosen which place to go to the nursing home? You're just using your luck now. They're patting their butt and running away, leaving you alone guarding an iron knot and still treating it like a treasure. Is that your thing? It was ordered by someone else with you, and they have all split up. Do you still treat them as your little treasure? You're shameless. What do you think I'm here for? I'm here to give you a hand and give you some travel expenses when you're even struggling to eat. Fang Ping's strong criticism successfully allowed Andre to break through the defense. No, they haven't remembered it yet because they are also busy cleaning up the mess. When someone calms down, there will always be a time to remember. By then, he would have nothing left. Looking back on half of his life, Andre's heart was suddenly filled with fear. He realized that Fang Ping was right. He still had women and children to support, but his current savings were not enough for him to spend. Not enough, far from enough. Do I have to work the hardest and earn the least amount of money every day like that frontline worker in the future? That's absolutely not possible. He believes his wife can't adapt to that kind of life. Watching Andre successfully scared by himself, a hint of cunning flashed in Fang Ping's eyes, but deep down he felt more guilty. Sorry, we really need scrap iron. Torpedoes can only be treated as waste. Hello, it's good to think about it here, Mr. Andre. I'll take a step first. Although the steel materials here are superior, I believe that with such a large alliance, there will always be a place where I can find it. After speaking, Fang Ping pretended to sigh and prepared to leave. Before he could even lift his feet, he suddenly heard an urgent sound coming from behind. I can't leave, I'll sell. I agree to sell. Mr. Andre, have you really made up your mind? Why don't you think more? Fang Ping looked thoughtful for you. No need, I have already considered it. Andre said firmly. But then he hesitated a bit and said, but this price is really too low. After paying the workers, there won't be much left. Okay, this is still a conscientious businessman. Fang Ping was very surprised. Unexpectedly, one cannot break their own bottom line. After all, he's not for himself. If he can save a penny for the factory, it's just an extra penny. Fang Ping immediately looked puzzled and said, there's nothing more I can do. After all, I'm buying scrap metal, not really buying an aircraft carrier. Moreover, with so many bombs on your ship, it will also cost me to retrieve them. I don't care, it's a big deal. I'll have people dismantle all the weapons on top, Andre said stubbornly. At this moment, he was particularly persistent, as if adhering to his own beliefs. Upon hearing these words, Fang Ping's first reaction was to refuse. No, absolutely not to dismantle. Such behavior startled Andre on the side. Feeling the astonishment in the former's eyes, Fang Ping rarely smiled casually. He said with a hint of guilt, "That's not enough. If we take down the losses, it's us." This time, it was Andre's turn to be surprised. Disliking waste is also yours. Not allowing it to be dismantled is also yours. What exactly do you dragon people belong to? Why only enter but not exit? Soon, this idea was forgotten by Andre. Since we have reached the point of negotiating the price. He has become particularly clear-headed now. The initial investment of the entire Valiang aircraft carrier can be disregarded, and according to the construction progress, only 38% remains. But only this 38% is needed, and an additional $200 million will need to be invested in the future, which can be imagined as the value behind it. Now Fang Ping has no possibility of attempting to take away the aircraft carrier by purchasing scrap metal for $5 million. Watching the other party's lack of salt and oil, Fang Ping suddenly felt tired. To be honest, it is almost impossible to find scrap iron of the same scale as the Black Sea shipyard again. Moreover, it is impossible for him to access other resources alone. As far as he knows, now the Alliance can package and sell aircraft, whether it's an aircraft carrier or not, but that thing has less steel content and is not as good as an aircraft carrier. The negotiable price is like this, if any signs of concession are found. Fang Ping had no doubt that the old fox across from him could definitely seize the opportunity to pursue. So, he not only cannot bargain, but also has to persist. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. $5 million, that's the bottom line. And you also have to give me a kickback. Fang Ping firmly insisted on a low price and did not relax at all. What's even more deadly is that the deal has not been reached yet, and he is empty-handed, openly demanding kickbacks. Andre was stunned on the spot. He began to fall into deep suspicion. Isn't it true that the dragon people are humble and gentle gentlemen? This is even more ferocious than Caribbean pirates. The new book sets sail, and I kneel down to beg for a flower, a reward, and a monthly pass. If something happens, my little brother will explode even more at 50. Chapter 5. No markup, but instead kickbacks. Kneel down. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. No markup, but instead kickbacks. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward. In the office, the atmosphere was once deadlocked, appearing very silent. Fang Ping and Andre stood opposite each other, with big eyes waiting for small eyes, and neither of them allowed the other. At the same time. Located outside the building, Emile and others are gathered together, anxiously discussing the negotiations between Fang Ping and their CEO. They speculated that the negotiations should have been very smooth, otherwise the gentleman from the mysterious ancient country of the East would not have stayed in the office for more than half an hour without coming out. I guess we may receive a large amount of compensation this time, said one of them. That's right, I also think so. The people of the Dragon Kingdom are the most humble and ethical, and they will definitely sell for a good price this time. Another person also agreed. Emile did not participate, but carefully recalled the small movements he had shown when he saw Fang Ping. He is polite and his hairstyle is exceptionally neat. It seems that there was no rude behavior except for a few rude remarks made earlier due to being pigeoned. Of course, such behavior can be forgiven. Overall, based on his years of experience, Emile is confident that Fang Ping is undoubtedly the most cultured Eastern gentleman. After thinking through everything, Emile rarely relaxed. He joked with a relaxed expression, with this free time, we might as well consider where we should go to play after receiving the compensation. Everyone smiled at the words and looked at the building across from them with hopeful eyes. That building is the office where their boss is located. Mr. Fang Ping, your conditions are too harsh. I'm sorry I can't agree, but you can leave now. Andre began to rush people. After hearing this, Fang Ping's eyebrows furrowed immediately. Mad, if the old man doesn't fall for the trap, is he pushing himself too hard? The prices I gave myself were indeed very fair, they were all based on international prices. No, we still need to have a good conversation with this old boy. I don't believe it anymore. I have been a person for 2 generations, and in my past life, I spent countless years in a war situation. The disciples I brought out dare to wander on the battlefield with just one mouth, but they can't enlighten you. Whatever I say today, I have to open up this knot for you. Ahem, Mr. N, I think we should sit down and have a good chat. Fang Ping coughed a few times to conceal his embarrassment. Later, he came to Andre's side as if he were a normal person, hunched over and looking very intimate. He leaned his mouth very close and whispered in Andre's ear, "Listen, I'll analyze it for you. Firstly, the Bears alliance has disintegrated, right? Then, the aircraft carrier is also someone else's, and if you insist on keeping it, it's okay. But can you allocate $2 billion to complete the follow-up? Even if it's completed, you, as the factory manager, should be more aware of the high maintenance cost than I am. Then, this thing is neither yours nor mine, is it? You're like exchanging other people's things for money now, buying and selling without any capital. Brother, why don't you hurry up and roll up the money and run away? What are you waiting for? Moreover, how chaotic the situation is now. If you invest this money and become a president or something, wouldn't you make even more money? It's great to exchange someone else's money for you being the president. Don't miss the opportunity to come again, Mr. Andre. After speaking these words, the scene fell silent again. It has been a long time since Andre's reaction, and Fang Ping is wondering if his own strength has decreased. But at this moment, he heard Andre panting heavily, his eyes turning red as he looked at him and said, "I agreed, but I must have cash, it must be in US dollars." Fang Ping fell silent in an instant. To be honest, he doesn't really want to agree to this condition. Foreign exchange is already limited, and the other party needs to emphasize that it is in US dollars. He estimated that his factory manager could come up with 1 million, which is considered good. That. You don't need to say much. If you dare to say no money, I'll jump off here and not sell it to you. Fang Ping hesitated for a moment and was about to speak. But when his expression fell into Andre's eyes, it immediately triggered a stress response from the other person, and Andre immediately walked to the window. Pushing open the window and letting the piercing cold wind outside blow into the room, he spoke harshly. Fang Ping. Immediately, he smirked and said, "Look at this, did I say I won't give it to you? Do I have to take time to raise money for you? I'll go back and find a way now. 3 days, at most 3 days, I must see the money," Andre said with a righteous tone. He finally figured it out. Rather than guarding this rundown factory, it would be better to go abroad with that sum of money for leisure. Originally, he was considering the deep friendship between the Bears Alliance and the Dragon Kingdom, and could consider joining forces in the past. But now it seems like it's over, unlucky. Okay, 3 days is enough. Fang Ping agreed. He turned around and was about to go out, but then stopped again. Then, in Andre's puzzled gaze, he frowned and said, "By the way, you have to give me a kickback on this transaction." At that moment, Andre's eyes shot out with a terrifying murderous intent. He couldn't help but draw his knife. Little brother kneels down to beg for a flower, a reward, and a monthly pass. There is data, I will explode at 50 immediately. Chapter 6. True acquiring steel. Kneeling to beg for flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. True Acquiring Steel. Kneeling to beg for flowers as a reward, coming out of the Black Sea shipyard. Fang Ping has a gloomy expression on his face. If he doesn't give it, then he won't give it. Why is he so anxious? Do you know how much contribution I have made to your Black Sea? With this idea in mind, Fang Ping quickly rushed back to the hotel and asked for a phone from the hotel owner. Steel has been found. But I haven't reported good news to the factory director yet. I believe the factory director would be very happy to know that he has done such a beautiful job and solved such a big problem for him. Fang Ping dialed the phone. After waiting for about half a minute, the familiar voice of the factory director finally rang out from the receiver. As soon as the other party spoke, they asked directly about the matter of steel. Hello, Fang Ping. Have you already found a partner? The factory director's tone revealed a hint of urgency. Fang Ping also rarely became serious. He said seriously, we have found the factory director. Really, the factory director's excited expression was clearly heard from the receiver. Of course it's true, factory director. I'll tell you, this time we not only found, but also the highest quality special steel. Anti-corrosive, high-temperature resistant, soaking in salt water for 10 to 8 years without any problems, the key price is still cheap. Fang Ping replied with an incredibly confident tone. Upon hearing such great news from the former, the factory director was overjoyed on sight. Subsequently, Fang Ping was able to constantly praise the other people around him from the factory director over the phone. Take a look, I'm not wrong. I knew Xiaofang must have a solution, but it's still these young people who have the most ideas and are good. Xiaofang, good job. You saved the people in the factory and are the big savior in our factory. When you come back, let your aunt make dumplings for you to eat. A hint of unnatural expression flashed on Fang Ping's face, and the strange words were embarrassing. But soon, he adjusted his mood. Because he remembered that he had something very important to report to the factory director. Cough, the factory director, please wait for a moment. I have something else to tell you, he said quickly. The factory director was surprised to hear about it. He immediately perked up and asked Fang Ping if there was anything else he needed to explain. It's like this, although this batch of steel has been roughly finalized, the other party has a requirement that it must be purchased in full and settled within 3 days. Fang Ping said with some nervousness. Upon hearing this, the factory director immediately became indifferent. Fortunately, he was still worried before, so why did he request it? So it's just a small matter. I'm not even afraid. Is that all you need? Yes, that's just that requirement. Hi, I thought it was something. Don't worry about Xiaofang. Your factory director still has this kind of ability. In one sentence, if you want money, you can pay in 3 days. The factory director agreed on the spot. After speaking, he jokingly said to the people around him, Xiaofang is still young and hesitant in his work. He still needs to consider such a small matter. Young people still need to exercise more. What the factory director said is that children still need to experience more. That's right, if it weren't for the factory director's support, this factory wouldn't have looked like anything. There were timely cheers coming from the phone. No need to ask, Fang Ping could guess from 1,000 miles away that he was the factory's bunch of idle flatterers. He couldn't help but roll his eyes. At the same time, Fang Ping also had a deep question in his heart. Is it difficult to believe that one's past memories are false? In my impression, in this era, the world was revolving around the beautiful country, and all transactions outside of the Dragon country had to align with the US dollar. Why did you just hear the factory director's tone so loud? Oh, by the way, Fang Ping, you just said that our partner requires us to buy everything at once. How much does it cost to buy everything, approximately how many tons? I can make the payment easily. If the factory doesn't have enough, I can go to the person above to apply. Just as Fang Ping had this question in his mind, on the other end of the phone, perhaps just as the factory director remembered, his inquiry came again. Oh, not much, the total weight is about 50,000 tons. Fang Ping said casually. Perhaps influenced by the previous confidence of the factory director, Fang Ping was also successfully infected. It's just that Fang Ping hasn't finished speaking yet. With a clang. There seems to be something falling on the other end of the phone. This sound successfully interrupted Fang Ping's next words. Then, he heard the panicked sounds of flatterers on the other side of the receiver, one by one constantly exclaiming in surprise, calling out the name of the factory director. Fang Ping himself was also startled and couldn't help but pause for a moment. He quickly asked the factory director on the phone if there was anything wrong. But the noisy sound coming from the phone afterwards. For a while. Only then did Fang Ping hear the familiar voice of the factory director again in his ear. The other person's voice was low and he said softly, "Xiao Fang, you just said, how many tons?" Fang Ping. He suddenly guessed that his previous memory should not have been mistaken. Later, he swallowed a few mouthfuls of water and slowly said, 50,000 tons. After saying these words, he quickly added, however, "Factory director, this is really cheap. I spent a lot of effort to get this price. There is no such store after passing this village." Factory manager. Is there anyone else reading this book? A batch with poor data, collecting is even more frustrating. If anyone were to watch, I would kneel down and beg for a flower, a reward, and a monthly pass. Data support is the biggest motivation for me. As long as there is any data, my little brother will explode at 20 immediately. Chapter 7. 100 times the leverage, the spring of steel mills. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The other end of the phone was incredibly quiet, as if dead. If it weren't for Fang Ping's sharp ears, he could vaguely hear the sound of breathing, and he couldn't even resist wanting to hang up the phone. Factory director. Director Li Dezhu. Are you speaking, factory director? Fang Ping continued tentatively. After a long time. The voice of the factory director on the phone was somewhat weak. But there was a strong shock in his tone. Can you tell me if you robbed the Mineral Management Bureau or the local large iron ore mine? 50,000 tons. Do you know the concept of 50,000 tons? Even before the disintegration of the country of bears, it was equivalent to half a year of production, right? Anyway, I'll make it clear to you that our factory doesn't need so much anymore. Not to mention our factory, these 50,000 tons are enough for the entire Dragon Country's monthly usage. On the phone, Li Dezhu repeatedly refused, stating that the quantity was too large to be used up. After Fang Ping finished listening, he immediately became unwilling. It's you who brags hard. I handle things myself. Otherwise, it's also you. It's still me who is causing trouble. What about playing with monkeys? The most crucial thing is it easy for him? He worked hard, his mouth was dry, in exchange for buying such a large aircraft carrier for $5 million. Say no, then don't do it. No, absolutely not. Even if it's for the sake of Andre's face, we can't do this. What if that old boy gets angry and comes down with that helper to fight for him? Fang Ping has never forgotten the hard fist of Andre before leaving. And there are twisted yellow hairs on the fists. He had no doubt that he could probably withstand at most one punch from others. At this moment, he just wants to say that he is too difficult. Persuading our partners, we also need to convince our own factory director. Helpless, he could only recount to Li Dezhu in detail the huge benefits that came with the successful transaction. No, factory director, don't get excited. Please sit down first and listen to me slowly. Now, have you sat down? Don't talk nonsense, speak quickly. Li Dezhu had no patience at the moment. Okay, Factory Director, listen to my analysis now. First of all, steel is a hard currency that can be used anytime and anywhere. I'm not wrong, right? That's quite right. Li Dezhu also acknowledged. As the director of the first steel rolling mill in Dragon Country, he knows more than anyone how scarce steel is in Dragon Country. Although Longwook currently has the highest steel production, due to technological reasons, it is almost difficult for them to process steel into the desired shape. Softness, hardness, corrosion resistance. Especially for some special steels used for special needs, it is even more difficult. Missiles, tanks, planes, artillery, which one doesn't need high-quality special steel. That's also why their factory urgently needs steel. More precisely, what they need is not steel, but steel that can be processed. But even if you're right, it's really cheap and we can't use it that much. Besides, we can't afford to buy it. Do you think it's easy to get foreign exchange? Li Dezhu continued. Speaking of the beginning, our country is still in a state of great waste waiting to be revitalized, running behind others. If the Dragon Kingdom prospers and leads the world in technology, would it still be so unfair? Not to mention buying with money, even if it's a gift, it doesn't necessarily have to be given. When Li Dezhu thought of this, he felt a sense of frustration in his heart, but he couldn't afford it. By the way, you haven't said yet, how much does it cost to buy this batch of steel? At this point, Li Dezhu has decided to abandon this batch of steel. At the same time, he was also curious about how much money Fang Ping had negotiated in order to persistently promote this cooperation to him. Upon hearing this, Fang Ping's eyes flashed with an unnatural expression. He pinched his nose and said, "Not much, just $5 million. Gah." Li Dezhu's voice had changed, and his eyes were like copper bells about to fall out. He had a dull face and a daze on his mind, and had not regained consciousness for a long time. Even the subordinates on the side saw the motionless appearance of their factory director and thought he was burping. The scene watched as it became chaotic again. Li Dezhu finally came to his senses. At this moment, his hands on the phone were trembling. He really wanted to ask Fang Ping, how and where did he calculate that he didn't have much? How could he be so calm at such a young age? $5 million, without even blinking. With so much money, even if we sell him, we can't take it out. But unfortunately, there was one who didn't have long eyes. On the side, the production department head couldn't help but start counting with his fingers. He murmured, 50,000 tons, $5 million, 1 ton is only 100, and I heard Xiao Fang say this batch is special steel, it's worth it. The head of the production department's eyes lit up, and Li Dezhu became angry and kicked the former out with a single kick. It's a good deal, can you afford it? He said bluntly. After kicking the other party away, Li Dezhu also muttered to himself, after all, what Fang Ping said was indeed reasonable. Such a good opportunity is rare. If I miss this time, I'm not sure when it will be in the future. Can't we expect the Maoxiong Kingdom to disintegrate again? As the factory director on the other end of the phone remained silent for a long time, Fang Ping knew that the other party was tempted and immediately took advantage of the heat to continue deceiving him. Factory director, think about it. With so much steel, our factory can't use it all. Isn't there another factory? There are so many factories across the country, we can't just focus on ourselves and give points to the workers' brothers. You know, those who can't eat don't care about our factory. Imagine that scene then. All the factory directors are grateful to you, you are their savior. After describing it, Li Dezhu admitted that he was somewhat tempted by Fang Ping's deception. But this is indeed not a small matter. But he couldn't bear to waste Fang Ping's hard work, and it wasn't easy for him to be alone outside. Li Dezhu gritted his teeth and immediately said, "It's done." 7th update. Kneel down and beg for a reward. A flower. A monthly pass. Little brother kneels down and asks for a little bit of data. As long as there is data, little brother will be even more explosive at 20. Chapter 8. 50,000-ton large order. Kneeling to beg for flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. 50,000-ton large order. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward after hanging up the long-distance phone. Here, Li Dezhu immediately announced the convening of a meeting for all department heads in the factory. Even he forcefully issued orders. Regardless of whether you are on leave, resting, or even if your wife is giving birth, you must come and be present, without exception. For a moment, the hearts of the audience fluctuated. Everyone speculated that there might be something big going on in the factory, otherwise the factory director wouldn't have been so serious. Leaders from various departments such as administration, production, technical equipment, and supply have all put down their work and gathered in the conference room. And as soon as they entered the conference room, they saw the factory director sitting there waiting for a long time. The air in the entire room seemed to be stagnant and very oppressive. For a moment, leaders from various departments looked at each other and guessed what had happened. Some clever ones have already started whispering to each other, secretly transmitting messages. Alright, since everyone is here, let's have a short meeting to focus on one thing, which is the issue of raising funds. Li Dezhu scanned around and immediately spoke up when he noticed that everyone was present. Raising funds. Everyone looked puzzled. Perhaps seeing the bewildered gaze in everyone's eyes, Li Dezhu didn't hide it and went straight to the point. He said, Comrade Xiaofang from the procurement department, you should all know that he has great potential at a young age. This time, he represented our factory to purchase steel from Maoxiong Country, and the result was very successful. He negotiated a big deal for us in the factory. However, there is a problem now. This order is too large for our factory to afford. We need you as our factory representative to go to other factories to discuss cooperation. Let other steel mills join us in taking this big order. Now, who has any questions? Li Dezhu's words have just finished. The doubts in the hearts of the department heads present can no longer be hidden. When it comes to orders, they can understand, but the orders they talk about are so big that even their factory cannot afford to eat them. Is this a bit exaggerated? Director, I have a question, said one of the administrative department heads, unable to resist speaking. Speak. It's like this factory director. We all want to know how big this order is, so that we can find the right solution to the problem. It will also be beneficial for us to negotiate cooperation with other factories in the future and grasp the right balance, said the administrative department head with a smirk. Li Dezhu looked deeply at the former, and of course, he understood that what the other party was thinking was just a lack of trust, relying solely on Fang Ping's own abilities. Moreover, it is also tricky for young people like Fang Ping to go abroad alone and take on such a large project. Of course, these are not the most important. Since these people want to know, he is too lazy to expose it. Li Dezhu stretched out his palm and said, not much, only $5 million. Hiss. In an instant, the audience suddenly heard a series of gasping sounds. Everyone looked unbelievable, with big mouths and the ability to fit 2 eggs in at the same time. No, can't we, factory director? Are you sure you're not joking with all of us? Said the administrative department head with a dry throat. 5 million, still in US dollars. How big does this order have to be? According to the international market, it must be at least 500 tons. No wonder. No wonder the factory director showed such an urgent state. Now it seems that the situation has indeed reached a critical moment. The few people in the conference room looked at each other in confusion. They exchanged glances in secret, both seeing disbelief from each other's faces. This little square is really amazing. What they didn't know was that they ultimately underestimated Fang Ping's abilities. A brand new steel square of 500 tons may not be worth it. But the aircraft carrier made of 50,000 tons of special steel is just one thing, he said. Soon. After a period of response, these department heads immediately returned to normal. 500 tons may sound like a lot, but it's just a monthly quota in their factory. Although there are many, it's not to say that their factory cannot afford them. What exactly is the factory director up to? The department heads looked skeptical. Li Dezhu sat at the top and remained silent. How could he not understand what these people were thinking after seeing their faces? He snorted coldly and said, "Don't think about it. If it's just a few hundred tons, and I don't take Li Dezhu seriously, even if it's a few thousand tons, you guys still need it. This time Fang Ping talked about 50,000 tons, so that's why I said our factory can't afford it and we need you to walk around." The poor annual performance in the factory has led to several leaders being lazy and not taking their work seriously. So Li Dezhu took this opportunity to lose face to a few people. Upon hearing this, several department heads all showed awkward expressions. But soon after, they immediately reacted. On the scene, an incredible scream suddenly rang out. 50,000 tons. How could it be possible? The head of the administrative department is about to drop his eyes to the ground. Although others may not be like this, they are not much worse than him. It's not that they have no knowledge, it's really that what Fang Ping did this time exceeded the understanding of normal people. $5 million bought 50,000 tons of steel. Is he the 40 thieves who robbed Alibaba? Chapter 9. Drying Factory Director. Just a billion points away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Drying Factory Director. Just a billion points away. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward. Li Dezhu could see all the expressions on the scene, and then a proud smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Yes, that's the expression. I can't just embarrass myself, you also have to follow along. Putting away the demon smile, Li Dezhu returned to normal. He solemnly assigned tasks to the few people present. Wang Mei, you go to the second rolling mill. Lu Taixing, you go to the Red Star rolling mill in Beijing. Shi Jin, you go to the first automobile manufacturing plant. Lu Yang. As one name after another was mentioned, each of these department heads was assigned a task. For a moment, their eyes were bright and lively, and their lazy expressions disappeared, replaced by a strange radiance. That expression was like being reborn and finding a goal to strive for. Li Dezhu also felt the changes in these people and couldn't help but smile at the corners of his mouth. He said, "All right, let's not talk too much. There are only 3 days left. On the third day at noon, no matter what progress you discuss, I will report it to me as soon as possible. We know the factory director." After speaking, each department head walked out of the conference room and headed towards their respective destinations. And Li Dezhu stood still, looking at the empty conference room, couldn't help but feel a headache and sigh. Fang Ping really knows how to cause trouble for him. Now, as the factory director, he is going to flatter someone with his old face. The door closed, and the entire conference room was instantly empty and quiet. 1 day later. The news of Anshan Steel Rolling Plant successfully signing a large amount of steel with Maoxiong Country has spread to half of Longgua's factories. And these leaders who came out of Anshan Steel Rolling Plant, from the factory director to the junior staff, were all like hungry tigers. Everyone begged for cooperation in vain. If you don't cooperate, then borrow money. All kinds of means are used to the extreme, directly making the leadership of other factories numb. At the same time, in the office of a certain Longhua bank, President Zheng Jianzhou looked helplessly at the middle-aged old man across from him. He couldn't help but speak up and say, "Uncle Dezhu, 1 million is already the bottom line. We really can't borrow more. Lending it to you again will have an impact. I have been using the quota from other factories, and I need to explain it to them afterwards. Borrow 500,000 or 200,000 more." Li Dezhu pursued him relentlessly. Zheng Jianzhou remained silent, showing a puzzled expression. 10,000, 50,000, isn't 10,000 all right? Li Dezhu said at the end. Watching the pleading expression on the face of this uncle who grew up holding him since childhood, Zheng Jianzhou felt very embarrassed in his heart. Foreign exchange savings belong to the whole country. Not just belonging to one factory. Do you have 5 million? Have, but if he goes out here, he won't be able to use it anywhere else, and the money for importing shells may not be available in the future. Moreover, he does not have such great authority. There's only one last dollar, which my friend gave me to take home for my daughter to play with. Zheng Jianzhou gritted his teeth and slapped a $1 coin from his pocket onto the table. Suddenly, the atmosphere on site instantly quieted down. The two gazes converged on the brass coin on the table, and the air suddenly became awkward. Dot. Dot. This process lasts less than 3 seconds. Finally, under the incredulous gaze of Zheng Jianzhou, Li Dezhu chuckled and grabbed the coin on the table in his hand. He said, "Thank you, big nephew. Just for me and the precious girl, this money. I borrowed it first." After speaking, Li Dezhu stood up and left with a gloomy expression. If he doesn't leave again, he won't have the face to stay here. Time passes day by day. In the blink of an eye, it was the last day of the transaction. That morning, Fang Ping stood in front of the phone at the small hotel. Every time the phone rang, he would go up and listen to see if he was looking for him. Repeating back and forth, he himself was almost stunned. "Fang, your phone number." Finally, amidst Fang Ping's numb gaze, the voice of the middle-aged landlady rang out in the hotel. With a swish, Fang Ping's eyes instantly lit up. "Factory director, did you raise all the money?" he said in his first sentence as he rushed over. Immediately after, Li Dezhu's almost tired voice rang from the other end of the phone. He said with a guilty tone, "Sorry, Xiaofang, the money was almost there." Suddenly, Fang Ping's smile froze on his face. Somehow, he suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. He asked again, almost, "How much is it?" "There's still 3.5 million left." Fang Ping. Dot. He suddenly fell silent. For some reason, he really wants to curse. In the end, Fang Ping held back and took a deep breath, forcefully suppressing the anger that had burned to the top of his head and extinguishing it under his buttocks. Then, with the last glimmer of hope in his heart, he asked, "If there's a few more days, can there be a chance to make it all together?" Fang Ping has confidence and relies on his 3-inch eloquence. Whenever the factory director tells him that as long as there is enough time, he will definitely let Andre know what it means to be clearly deceived. Just the next second. With the words of the factory director, he was instantly dumbfounded. Li Dezhu said, "Sorry, Xiaofang, there's not a penny left. Can you think of a way on your end?" Chapter 10. The Big Hole of 3.5 million. Kneel down. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Big Hole of 3.5 million. Kneel down and beg for flowers to reward. Let me find a way. Fang Ping's eyes widened, and at this moment he doubted life. I am just a purchaser in the factory, not the king in the wishing pool. Is it okay to make a wish here? 1.5 million US dollars. The distance of 5 million is still over 3 million. Even with a big face, it's impossible for someone to avoid so much. For a moment, Fang Ping's heart was very tired. He really wants to tell the factory director, "You keep taking me back." If someone else had the ability, at least they would have to be at the level of Caribbean pirates. Liangshan heroes. But unfortunately, he himself was very clear in his heart that even if there was a way, the factory director could not find his head. Helpless, he persisted in asking again, "Factory director, really there isn't any more?" The other end of the phone is silent. After several seconds, Fang Ping finally heard the answer. No more. The voice is terrifyingly low. For a moment, Fang Ping even suspected that he had just experienced auditory hallucinations. He furrowed his brows high, tightly locked together, indicating that his foreign exchange was clearly tight to a certain extent. But precisely because of this, Fang Pingkai needs to find a way to get this batch of steel back. This is a special steel used for strategic purposes, and no matter how much it comes, it won't be too much. At this point, Fang Ping's heart immediately became horizontal. At this moment, the voice of the factory director rang out again on the phone. In just a few days, the factory director has endured countless pressures, and even his voice has become much older. He said weakly, "How about? Forget it." When Fang Ping said these words, he clearly heard a strong sense of guilt from the factory director's tone. He immediately disagreed. "No, we can't forget it. This batch of steel is too rare. It sounds terrible, even if it costs 10 times more, it's worth it," Fang Ping said firmly. "Can." The factory director on the other end of the phone clearly wanted to say something, but was completely interrupted by Fang Ping's next words. Fang Ping pondered for a moment and said, "Factory director, if you exchange these 3 million yuan for domestic resources or dragon currency, you can have this permission." When Fang Ping said these words, he had already thought it out. Since foreign exchange is not feasible, then use the local money from Dragon Country to gather. Anyway, this money is spent everywhere, why can't we go to the Dragon Kingdom? He believed that André would definitely understand his good intentions. Dragon Country coin. There was a hint of surprise in Li Deju's voice, and then he asked again, "Is that possible? Will they agree? The world knows that the US dollar is the most valuable. Almost all countries are circling around them, including their Dragon Kingdom." Now that Fang Ping said such a thing, he had to worry whether he was too anxious and thought of some crooked way. Feeling the strong concern in the factory director's tone, the corner of Fang Ping's mouth suddenly grinned. He smiled and said, "Where did you think, factory director? I was just wondering if I could trick André into investing in our Dragon Country. In that case, the US dollar or Dragon Country currency doesn't matter." Upon hearing Fang Ping's thoughts, Li Deju suddenly dropped a large stone to the ground. Subsequently, Fang Ping heard Li Deju's cheerful and confident voice on the phone. "It's just over 3 million US dollars, which is equivalent to 30 million US dollars in our Dragon Country currency. Our factory's monthly revenue is not just this amount, no problem at all. Not to mention 30 million, even with an additional 0, old man, I can completely handle it. Don't forget, Xiaofang, I haven't been running for nothing these days, old man. In one sentence, be bold and do it. As long as you can bring Ganlai over, the old man will take responsibility for what happens. Don't forget, old man, I've found several big factories to support you." On the phone, Li Deju was full of courage and enthusiasm. There is quite a heroic aura of 1,000 feudal lords in the past. But Fang Ping was speechless for a moment while listening here, and it didn't seem like much. He felt like he could handle it again. If you have the ability, you can solve the foreign exchange problem at once. It also saves the leader a sentence. His subordinate ran away and broke his leg. Add a 0. The tone is quite impressive. Unable to bear the floating appearance of his own factory manager, Fang Ping intentionally poured cold water to cool down the other party's feverish head. "Since you're so awesome, why don't you think of a way to make up for the remaining 3.5 million, he tentatively said. In an instant, there was silence on the phone. Later, Fang Ping only heard one such sentence. "Anyway, that's all for the budget. You have full control over this order, and 1.5 million has already arrived at the designated account. As long as you speak up, we can make the payment at any time." After hastily saying these words, Fang Ping immediately heard that the phone had been hung up from the other end. Only Fang Ping remained, staring blankly at the phone. For a while. He scratched his head like a madman, muttering incessantly, 3.5 million, 3.5 million. How should we discuss with André? Fang Ping was restless and kept walking back and forth in place. At the same time. On the other side. After the factory director Li Dezhu hung up the phone, the several department heads behind him were already worried and their faces were filled with nervousness. So, did Fang Ping say anything? One of them asked. I said it. Li Dezhu nodded first and then said everything that Fang Ping had said on the phone before. Suddenly, the scene fell silent. At this moment, the head of the administrative department suddenly murmured words and said with a worried face, "That's a hole worth 3.5 million yuan. Can that kid Fang Ping handle it?"